Okay, let me answer the ones from yesterday. The distance equals rate times time. So the first one, I had you find the distance when the rate was 60 and the time was 4 hours. So this is a straight formula where you do D equals R times T. So when you do 60 times 4, you get 240 miles. You travel 240 miles. Okay? So you do 60 times 4, that's where you get your 240. Then I had you find when you went 70 for 3.5 hours. Okay? Do those times each other, you get 245 miles. So you travel 245. You just do 70 times 3.5, you get 245. Number 3, I had you try to find the time, okay, when you traveled 400 miles and you went 50 miles per hour. So here was your distance, here was your rate. What you didn't know was your time. So you had to do 400, okay, divided by 50. Okay, because remember your new formula now is D over R equals T. So you had to put 400 divided by 50 to get your time, which comes out to 8 hours. Okay, 400 divided by 50 is 8. And then I had you do the same thing where you had to find time and you went 270 miles and you went 60 miles per hour. You do you do 270 divided by 60 and you get 4.5. So it took you 4.5 hours. If you answered 4 hours 30 minutes or 4.5 hours, that is 270 divided by 60. So that was 4.5 hours. Okay. Then number 5 and 6. Okay, so number 5, I had you find the rate when you went 550 miles. So here's your distance again. And you knew it took you 5 hours. So this time you have your time. So same thing, when you rework your formula, it's going to be distance divided by time gives you your rate. In this case, you were going 110 miles per hour. Okay, so when you do 550 divided by 5, you get 110. You were going 110 miles per hour. And the last one is you were traveling, or you needed to know your rate, and you went 195 miles, and it took you 3 hours. So you do 195 divided by 3, and you get 65. You were going 65 miles per hour. Okay? So 195 divided by 3 is 65 miles per hour. So that was those there solving for different letters on the equation, on that formula. Now, the last thing I want to do kind of with formulas is, I would say unrelated in the way of, it has nothing to do with distance or rate or time, but it is formulas, and that's why I want to stay with it. And it's your most basic. I mean, there is so many different formulas on this thing that you could go, you could spend a whole class on all the different formulas that we're going to go through. But this one's just going to be your basic area formula. So I'm just going to look at a triangle and a rectangle. Now you could do square, you could do trapezoid, you could do a circle. Some of that we do in geometry, but I wanted to keep it on these two just to kind of show you how you can apply. Once you start looking up other formulas, you could apply this knowledge and keep going. You don't have to stop here. And I think it's good for applied math because, you could build a little something that you need to know how to use those basic area formulas. So, and I know I ran into this when I had to put a little flooring for a dog pen that I built. I had to use these basic area formulas to figure out how much flooring I needed, how many concrete blocks I needed to buy. So, it is important to kind of be aware of these things. The first one is the area of a rectangle. So a rectangle has special characteristics. We covered this in Math Lab, but that formula is length times width. So area equals length times width. So if you've got a rectangle all you need to know is two of the measurements. You need to know the width and the length here, length times width. You don't need to know these other ones. Now you do for perimeter, you need to add them all up. But for area, you just need the two so that you can multiply them. Now, obviously, we know if that's 8, so is this. And if that's 6, so is this. But all you need to know are these two to multiply them. So and another thing is if it's inches, okay, so if it's 6 inches and 8 inches, or if it was 6 feet and 8 feet, what you're going to do is you're going to multiply these two numbers. So it's 48. That's your math answer. And then it's inches squared. If it had been feet, it would be feet squared. And so that's like when you carpet a floor. That's why you go in and you say, I need 48 square feet, you know, if it's 6 feet by 8 feet. Okay, so that's multiplying those two. Okay, another example would be one, even if they're really close, that's fine. Let's say you've got 3 feet by 4 feet, so it's 3 by 4. Okay, and let's say it's feet this time. Okay, all you do is multiply 3 times 4, and it's 12 feet squared. Okay, so very easy formula to use, but it's an important one. A rectangle is very, very common. You just do 3 times 4, and so it's 12 feet squared. One little thing on this is if you've got, and I probably won't put this on your assignment, but it is good to know, just like we did the manipulation of formulas yesterday. Let's say they gave you a rectangle and they only gave you one measurement and they left this one out, but they told you your answer. So let's say they tell you it's going to end up being 30 feet squared. Okay, and that's not this, that's just saying the area. Well, remember, you already know your width. What you don't know is your length. And so if you divide by this, rework the formula so you can cancel that out, then you end up with that the length is 10, 30 divided by 3 is 10. So you can fill that gap in by working backwards. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That's like what the ones we did yesterday, where instead of solving for A and you plug these two in and multiply them, if they give you the A, the answer, but left one of these out, all you need to do is divide by the other one to solve for that missing one. Okay, so I think that's important to just hit that there, that you can do that. Okay, the other area formula I want to spend a little bit longer on is triangle. And triangles can look all different ways, so can rectangles, but the formula is always the same. It's area equals half of base times height. And don't worry, we don't have to do fraction stuff. It's just, we'll do the base times height, and at the very end to do the half, we just divide by 2. Okay, so that's going to be the easy part of that, is when we're done with this part, we just divide by 2 to get our area. So a triangle, you know, it could look like this. And the first thing, let's put a 6 there. First thing I want to show is a base doesn't always have to be on the bottom. Okay, we're so used to that word base being bottom, but a triangle could be flipped around and you know, it could be on all different things. What you're going to determine is your base is where you determine your height. Now, if I had a ruler and let's say I'm standing in a triangle, let's say I'm standing inside of a pyramid or something, I would not measure the height of that room by slanting my ruler and, you know, slanting it up to the sky and saying, okay, that's how tall it is. You would not take this measurement here. Let's say this measurement is 8 or something, or 12 or something. That is not how tall the triangle is. You would not stand and take a ruler. You wouldn't stand in your room and take a ruler and go diagonally all the way to the corner of your thing and say that's how tall your room is. You go straight up and down. So that means this is not the height, okay? The height is what forms a 90-degree angle with this base, okay? It'd be like standing here at the bottom and pointing your ruler straight up. That's what's going to form the 90. That's what's going to be your height. So in this case, they'll give you this height, and let's say they say it's 10, okay? So now you've got your base and your height, and that's what I was talking about. This doesn't have to be on the bottom. If you took this triangle and flipped it around, you know, and you had your base and your height this way, that's fine. It's what forms the 90-degree angle. So here's your base, here's your height. So now we know what we can multiply. So 6 times 10, okay, is 60. And then the last thing we need to do is half that. So we're going to divide that by 2. and we get 30. Okay, whether it be inches or feet or whatever, it's 30. Okay, so easy thing to do is do 6 times 10 divided by 2. Now, just to be clear, this doesn't always have to go through the middle. You could have a triangle look more like this. Okay, and here's your base on this one, and the height kind of go over here to the side. Now, it's what forms the 90-degree angle, though. So that's why if you're standing down here on this base, that's how tall to the very tip of the triangle is your height. So in this case, let's say it's 4. Okay, I just wanted to point out, it doesn't always have to go right in the middle of the triangle, okay? Because if I did this, that's not going to reach the top of it. It's what forms the 90 to the very tip here. So in this case, it's 5 times 4, which is 20, but don't forget at the very end to divide by 2. So in this case, the area is 10, okay? There's a triangle that could look like this, a 90-degree, a right triangle, okay? And so in this case, let's say you've got an 8 and a 5, and here's your right triangle. Well, there's your base and your height, okay? This forms to the tip, down here to a 90-degree angle, so it doesn't go through the triangle, but it's out here on the side. That's what forms your 90, so it's already giving you the base and the height. So in this case, you do 8 times 5, which is 40, and divide by 2 at the end, and you get 20 for this triangle. Okay, another kind of triangle that can look like a little different, but you're still doing the same thing, is an obtuse triangle. Okay, now in this case, let's say they give me here. Now, if you look, there is no point, like let's say this is my base. There's nothing that I can draw to form a 90-degree angle with any spot on this line here. But remember, any line can continue on. Okay, I could continue on any line either way. And so to form the tip to a 90-degree would be out here outside the triangle. But that's still the height. You know, if I'm standing in here, and I walk out here and I look straight up, this is how tall it is. So in this case, they're going to put it out to the side, the height. So I've got my base, I got my height. It's just on the outside of the triangle, but I do it the same way. 7 times 4 is 28. At the very end, divide that by 2, and you get 14. Okay, so that is the base and height and how you would work that triangle. So I gave you, and you may have to go back and look at them. The key is just plug in, find out what your base and height is, multiply them, and at the very end divide by 2. And that I gave you different looks of what those triangles can look like. Last little thing that I think is important, because never in life really do shapes work out perfectly where you have a perfect rectangle or something like that. Always know, like if you had a shape, and I'm not going to make you do this one, but if you had a shape like this or something, and you're like, well, what would be the formula for that? There is no formula for any shape that could look like all different ways. You could have another shape look like this, and you're like, well, what's the formula for that? There is no set formula. But what you could do is turn them into like this rectangle, find the area of that rectangle, and then find the area of this rectangle or square, whatever it is. Same thing here. Find the area of the rectangle, add it to the area of this rectangle, add it to the area, and that's how, and so you're using your rectangular formula, and you're cutting them into pieces, and then you can add them all up. Well, let's do one of those with both our shapes that we looked at. Let's look at a house, and this is going to be a very primitive looking house here. But let's say they give me 8, 2, and then let's say they say this is 3, and we could say it's feet or meters or whatever it is. In fact, let's do it as meters, okay? Just to show that it doesn't matter what the measurement is. So here I've got a rectangle here, and I've got this triangle on top. Well, I can treat each one separately and do them and add them together to get my full area of the house. So let's do the rectangle first. Let's cover up this triangle, and it's 8 times 2, length times width. So that's 16 meters squared. And I'm going to add that, so that's all this area here. And I'm going to add that to the area of the triangle. And you say, well, I need the base. Well, if this is 8, so is this. So my base is 8. My height is 3. So 8 times 3 is 24. And don't forget at the very end to divide by 2 on a triangle. You don't have to do it on a rectangle. but you have to do it on a triangle. So that is going to be 12 meters squared. Okay, so here's the rectangle, here's the triangle. Okay, so here's the rectangle, here's the triangle. You're going to add them together to get 28 meters squared. Okay, so the full area of that house is 28 meters squared. So I wanted to show that you can use this, you can go further. I mean, that, like I said, I just gave you a little crash course in the most basic ones, but you can take that further and start using those formulas and kind of use common sense and practice and work through that and give you some exposure to some of those formulas, okay? Let me put an assignment up there. This will be, this last day's Thursday's assignment, so, or, you know, if you're watching this later, it doesn't have to be Thursday, but this is going to be the assignment for this one. Let's see. So I want you to find the areas of these shapes. This is a rectangle, 5 and 9. Okay, here's another 1, 2, and 3. Then I've got a triangle here that is 6 and 12. I've got a triangle here that is 4 and 7. I got a right triangle here that is 6 and 8. That's showing you it's a right triangle. I've got a obtuse triangle here that is 5 out here and 6 for the base. And then I'm going to have you do one of these house ones. And that's supposed to be a rectangle, sorry. So it is a rectangle, it's just poorly drawn to the side here. And so it's 2 by 10 on the rectangle, and then this height here of the triangle is 5. Okay? I'm going to have you do those area formulas. Remember, area of a rectangle is length times width, and an area of a triangle is half of base times height. So use those formulas to solve these 7 problems. Okay? Thanks, guys.